Well, good morning. I'm going to talk you through the Four Noble Truths today. Hopefully you've seen the BBC video about this. Uh, this follows on from the Three Universal Truths. They're very much connected together. I've been reading my go-to book on this, which is Peter Harvey's An Introduction to Buddhist Ethics. And it's got some background on the Four Noble Truths. I'll just take you through them again. You've heard Stephen Fry explain that on the BBC video. The first is that all life involves suffering. This is a kind of call to realism. You shouldn't expect life to be a bed of roses, immensely happy and joyful. We're living through a difficult time at the moment, but previous generations have had it very tough themselves. Think of the generations that have lived through wars, those in the 1930s who lived through a Great Recession. For many, many decades, we've had it relatively easy, and suffering is universal, and all of life involves suffering. You're born, there can be difficulties in birth, there are risks in growing up from 0 to 5. Around the world, there's lots of tragically infant mortality from 0 to 5. We live in a country with an amazing NHS and a lot of success in child health that wouldn't have been there in the 19th century. So all of life involves suffering, and that carries on. We're mortal, we die, and therefore there's grief at losing people that we love. And there's the small sufferings of life, from a rumbly stomach as you're waiting lunch, to injuries, sickness, disease. Suffering is part and parcel of life. And you might say in evolutionary terms that mutation drives forward evolution, and so suffering is part and parcel of what propels evolutionary development. 2, dukkha, suffering is caused by craving. Now, not all of suffering is caused by craving, but certainly we can compound or make suffering worse by desiring that things were different than they are. Imagine it's a rainy day outside and you say, oh, I just wish it was sunny. Why is it rainy? It's always raining in Manchester. Well, it hasn't been the last few weeks, but imagine you say that, you're making it worse. If you said, okay, it's raining, but let's put a waterproof on and go out and be positive, then that would be an example of overcoming desire, just kind of accepting reality. And so suffering is caused by desire. We could think of this more acutely if we think of people who are addicted, let's say alcoholics. So their desire is for more and more alcohol, and that's what's causing all their ill health and their suffering. Or you might have a desire for some ice cream, and then you kind of eat the whole tub, and then you feel a bit bloated, and that is causing suffering. So the more we desire things, the more it causes us suffering. And we should be content. We should learn to accept things. We can overcome desire or overcome suffering if we overcome desire. That if we accept that death, tragic and painful as it is, and grief as it brings about, death occurs, then gradually grief can give way to acceptance. Or if we accept that maybe, I don't know, when you eventually go on to university and you leave home, that's a painful experience for both you and your parents, but you accept that. Life changes, people move on, and that will enable you to overcome suffering. And to overcome suffering, you must pursue the middle way. Now, the Buddha had grown up in the life of the palace, and then he turned to the life of an ascetic, someone who denied themselves all food unless it blew into their lap, in his case. And he starved himself. He kind of became so emaciated that he could feel his backbone through his stomach. Now, the Buddha then decided that the best course was not either extreme, not the life of the palace where he had 3 palaces, one for each season, where all suffering was kind of brushed out of the way, and not, on the other hand, the life of an ascetic, but somewhere in the middle. So monks will typically eat their food from about 6 in the morning till about 12 midday, and then they don't eat after that. They don't carry money with them, and they live a life of simplicity and contentment. So they find that middle way. There is some food. They get enough food to live and to do well. They get enough sleep and life, but they don't overindulge, and they don't harshly punish their bodies. So there's a kind of middle ground. And part of this is positive. It's the belief that you can change. And there's a wonderful story of a Buddha, who says, you shouldn't pigeonhole people and say, oh, he's a thief, he will forever be a thief. The Buddha once deliberately visited a murderous bandit, doesn't sound very promising, called Angulimala, and he needed only a little bit of persuasion to change his ways, and he became a monk, and eventually Angulimala became enlightened himself. He became a Buddha. And so the Buddha believes that if everything can change, then things can change from bad to good as well as good to bad. And let's hope that in the present circumstances that happens. Now, what you're asked to look at is, number one, what percentage of time are you completely happy? A very subjective question, but give a percentage and say maybe at the moment how you feel and why. In what situations do you wish that you were somewhere else and doing something else? And I'm sure you will be thinking, I wish I was at school, rather than in lockdown at present, where all my mates are and where there's lots of good education going on and plenty of chance to have a social life and to do some sport and music and drama, whatever. 3, what parts of your life are you happy with, and what would you need to change to be completely happy? So you could think about maybe new hobbies you'd like to take up, or how you might improve in certain subjects, or at the end of the year exams, how you think you could possibly improve on last year. You might think, I would like to read a bit more, get some more books read during the year, or I might want to practice a bit more on my music. I might want to be happier if I could play more sport at the moment. So give examples of that. Dukkha, suffering and being dissatisfied. Now, this isn't just if you're in pain. It's also the general sense of dissatisfaction. So there's where you get an injury or where you're sick and ill, that's suffering. But the human condition, the Buddha says, is it has this low level of dissatisfaction that we can often feel. That we talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. Someone else is having a better time than we are, and what we should be doing instead is being thankful for what we've got, being content, accepting, rather than always craving for something more. That's where the discontent, the unhappiness comes from, the Buddha says. So 3 things that you're craving at the moment. Maybe the freedom to go out and play with your mates, ability to go to school, maybe a holiday that you wanted. How does having such things make you feel unhappy? So cravings that you have that are unsatisfied, how does that make you feel unhappy? And if these cravings were fulfilled, might you still not be completely happy? So we often imagine, if I only had this, if I only had that, then I'd be completely happy and I would never ask for anything again. It's not true. The human condition, human nature, is that we want what we haven't got. And the Buddha puts his finger on something very astute here about human nature. So we need to learn contentment, gratitude, thankfulness for what we've got, rather than always wanting more, because we'll never be satisfied. To overcome dukkha, we must overcome tanha. Do you think that if you stop craving things, you would stop suffering and be contented with your life? Why or why not? Well, we've spoken about this. What qualities would a person need to develop to stop craving? It's a real challenge to become content, to not look at other people's stuff or life on Facebook or on the media and think, I want that, I would be fulfilled. If I only had that, if I were only like them, then I would be happy. And the fact is, you wouldn't be. And they aren't happy 100% of the time, because that's human nature. And if we can learn this and learn to be content, then we can overcome a lot of suffering. To do this, we must live the middle way. Explain 2 ways in which someone could be unhappy if they lived a life of luxury. Well, even if you're living a life of luxury, there could still be some things that are better. You know, you could still want more than you've got. So however rich you are, however healthy you are, however much you travel, however much you read, however successful you are, you can always want more rather than be grateful for what you've got. So that could make someone unhappy. And the Buddha was unhappy. You know, he was in the palace. His father thought he'd provided him with everything he wanted, and therefore he wouldn't go off and become a holy man, but instead he'd take over his father's kingdom and grow it, expand it through military conquest. He was unhappy in the palace, and that's why he went out to explore with his charioteer Channa. So even in that wealth, that extreme of luxury, he wanted more. Explain 2 ways in which someone could be unhappy if they lived a life of hardship. So at the other extreme, it's all very well saying, you know, you don't need anything, just be content with your lot in life. You can have far too little. You know, there are lots of people who are homeless or who are starving or who are denied healthcare that could save lives, and they are in immense unhappiness. So extreme wealth and extreme poverty are both in their own ways very bad situations to be in, or certainly poverty is a lot worse, but the human nature is such that we will want more. And the middle way, the Buddha thinks, is the way forward, to just find a balance in the middle. Have enough, don't always want more, and be realistic about you do have needs. You need food, you need shelter, you need good friends and family, you need purpose and meaning in life, but you don't need to always crave for more, because that will bring about suffering. Money can't buy you happiness is our evaluative argument. So look at the pros and the cons. So the Buddha's kind of saying you need a middle ground. You know, it's no use saying you don't need any money. You do. The Buddhist monks rely on donations from the lay community to the monastic community in order to survive. You need money, you need income, you need food on the table, but you won't find full contentment in that unless you can develop a sense of gratitude in life. So money can't buy you happiness. There are lots of things in life. The best things in life are free, they sometimes say. Love, friendship, a sense of meaning and purpose. Those things you can't really buy. And therefore money isn't the be all and end all. You can't take it with you when they go, as they say. So it's not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. It's not that you undervalue it, but the 2 extremes of extreme wealth and extreme poverty, in the middle, the Buddha says, is a place of contentment where you find greater happiness in less craving. So have a think about those questions, and I will see you in the lesson today.